Hallo zusammen! Now that the 7th studio album Rammstein by Rammstein is out everywhere in the world and we all had a chance to listen to the album, I guess more than just once, let's dive deeper into the actual songs on the album. As you might know if you've watched my previous videos about Rammstein and their new songs, I've already tackled Deutschland and the respective music video, the same is true for Radio, and I've also analyzed the leaked lyrics of Puppe, back then leaked of course. So let's dive into the album more chronologically this time. Let's talk about the third song, Zeig dich. What is it about? What could the lyrics be translated to? And what do I think about them? What they are about and what not? Let's do that. First of all, the title Zeig dich is an Aufforderung. Die Aufforderung Singular, die Aufforderungen Plural, the demand. The addressed person is supposed to do something, basically. Zeig dich translates to either show or reveal yourself, depending on the implication. Since it contains the informal personal pronoun dich, you or yourself, the lyrical eye seems to be addressing someone who is close to them or someone they know personally. At least you could get that impression. A formal form of address in this context would be zeigen Sie sich, for Sie being the standard formal form of address when you don't know a person, and /or out of respect and politeness. For instance, as long as you're not friends with your boss or it's actually common to use the du form in your company when you talk to each other, you would most definitely say Sie. If you want to learn more about du and sie, how these terms actually differ from each other and what they are about, how to use them in the German language, feel free to watch my German lesson on that topic. If you've also watched my other videos about several Rammstein songs and the band in general, you will know that I keep naming Till Lindemann's love for ambiguous words and phrases in Rammstein's lyrics. However, funny enough, I find this song to be a bit less ambiguous compared to many other Rammstein tracks. It still contains two-sided metaphors and the like though. So here's what the initial lyrics sung by the choir translate to in both English and German. Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure, because I'd say it's an artificial kind of Latin they've used here, so I can't really translate that. I mean, a term like crucifixus is related to das Kruzifix, the crucifix, and lumine seems to be related to das Licht, the light, which also gets mentioned later on, but other than that, I can't really say what all this is referring to. But maybe you have an idea though, or your own interpretation. What is special about the actual German verses in this song is that even though each line is a combination of singular words, some of these pairs of words directly relate to each other and create a combined meaning. So the following terms are either verbs, adjectives or nouns, which also tells us that the recurring prefix ver can be found in many types of words in the German language. All following verbs might as well be expressed or translated as present participles in English. So, because of that, in this first verse I'm primarily using the infinite verb forms, whereas I'm using the present participles for following verses, simply to show both forms. So here's the first verse. Verlangen, verfluchen, verdammen, Versuchung, Verdammnis, Versprechen, verüben Sie Verbrechen, Verheißung, verkünden, Vergebung aller Sünden, verbreiten und vermehren im Namen des Herrn. Desire, to curse, or combined cursing desire. We don't really know if it's one or multiple desires without the article though. It's either das or die Verlangen. To damn, temptation. Die Versuchung, singular. Die Versuchungen, plural. Damnation, to promise, or promising damnation in that sense. Die Verdammnis, singular. Die Verdammnisse, plural. They commit crimes, which is a linked phrase, so to speak. Das or die Verbrechen, the crime. Promise, proclaim, or proclaiming the promise. Die Verheißung, singular. Die Verheißungen, plural. Absolution or remission of all sins, which again is a linked phrase. Each word is related to each other. Die Vergebung, singular. Die Vergebungen, plural, the absolution or remission, and die Sünde, singular, die Sünden, plural, the sin. The last two lines are connected as well, to spread and to procreate in the name of the Lord. For des Herrn being the genitive singular form of der Herr, Mr., which again refers to der Mann, singular, In a religious, fixed German Christian phrase like im Namen des Herrn, in the name of the Lord, der Herr commonly refers to the Christian God. You can find both spellings either with or without an E at the end of Herrn in German. Even though these two lines might not even be seen as something primarily negative, because spreading and procreating increases the number of people, they truly refer to something negative and delicate here. I guess you've all heard of the many religious Missbrauchsskandale, abuse scandals, especially in the Roman Catholic Church and directly related Christian institutions. These were brought to the surface, meaning made public, more and more often and regularly in recent years. Many priests both allegedly and proved have abused children in religion welfare institutions, sometimes for many years. And while I don't want to start a big discussion on these things right here, and also since frankly there's not too much to debate about this behavior at all, I of course want to state that I'm also shocked by these things and thoroughly appreciate that a band like Rammstein, who's kind of known for addressing these highly delicate topics in their songs, doesn't shy away from dealing with this topic either, even though it might be provocative to some, because obviously they do this in a rather direct and upfront way. At the end of the verse, Till sort of balances the usual pronunciation of the verb vermehren and Herrn, which sounds similar regarding their vowels, but vermehren contains a so-called Dehnungs-H, a prolonging or stressing H, which results in a longer verbalization of the vowel E, vermehren. In Herrn, however, we have the exact opposite, so to speak, a double consonant R which shortens the verbalization of the vowel E, Herrn. So in a daily German context, we Germans would verbalize this like verbreiten und vermehren im Namen des Herrn, whereas Till very slightly stresses the first E in Herrn in order to make both terms sound a bit more rhyming, I guess. It's a really minor detail though. The lines Verdammnis, Versprechen, verüben Sie Verbrechen pretty much sum up the whole first verse to me. If one was to express this in a colloquial saying, the lyrical eye could also have said, "These priests don't practice what they preach," in a quite cynical way, of course. They tell and warn of damnation if you live a very sinful life, yet these priests' own moral compasses obviously are more than just a little bit twisted and tilted, if I may say so. The line Vergebung aller Sünden therefore is ambiguous in the context of these lyrics. The priests are able and expected to wipe away all sins from believers, yet some of the priests tend to live very sinful lives themselves. We Germans call this kind of behavior die Doppelmoral, which is a singular term, whereas in English it's a plural term. Double or two-sided morals, translated literally, which means double moral standards. Singer Till, respectively the lyrical eye, then continues with a short, shouted "Zeig dich!" And while you can very well use both translations, I'd personally go with "show yourself" in this case, and I'm also gonna tell you why. To be honest, the first time I listened to the song as a whole, I didn't really draw the connection at all. I didn't really get what "Zeig dich" would refer to, or to whom that would refer. Who is addressed here? So, of course, after I've listened to the song a couple of times, I actually got to the connection. Also because that is actually answered in the actual song later on. But let's get into that a bit later. First though, here comes the second verse, which goes Verstecken, verzichten, verbrennen und vernichten, Verhütung verboten, verstreuen Sie Gebote, Verfolgung verkünden, Vergebung der Sünden, verbreiten, sich vermehren im Namen des Herrn, hiding, abstaining or relinquishing, burning and destroying, contraception or birth control prohibited, for die Verhütung Singular, die Verhütungen Plural. They scatter commandments, for das Gebot Singular, die Gebote Plural. Proclaiming prosecution, die Verfolgung Singular, die Verfolgungen Plural. Forgiveness, absolution or remission of all sins. Spreading and procreating in the name of the Lord. Again, this verse addresses the bilateral moral ethics certain priests and other religious child abusers seem to have and live according to. This line states the proclamation of prosecution, which not only ironically, but more so cynically, has taken certain religious Würdenträger, der, plural die Würdenträger, the dignitary, and related institutions quite a while, for instance when it comes to really paying attention to what victims have to say. The same can surely be said about a certain hesitant reaction when it comes to solving these mysterious cases of child abuse, for instance by just slowly making cases public and only bringing information and evidences to the public table bit by bit. However, I'd say it's this line in specific which indirectly ascends the overall expressiveness of this verse to a meta level, if you will. By mentioning the phrase Verhütung verboten, sexual contraception prohibited, the lyrical eye also criticizes the current Roman Catholic state of affairs regarding the unallowed use of condoms and similar contraceptives, which not only but primarily gets criticized regarding regions with a fast spread of dangerous sexual diseases like AIDS. Driving further down this religious road, from my experience, many people also draw a potential connection between the ordinary sexual urge human beings have, which might get exaggerated or lead to potential sexual abuses, because priests are bound to a religious ruling that we Germans commonly call der Zölibat, the celibacy. Not only but especially a Roman Catholic priest, who by the way is der plural die Priester, also der plural die Pfarrer, has to swear never to have any loving relationship with another person, let alone to have sex or to get married while they work in high service as priests of the Roman Catholic Church. It's basically a Gelübde, das plural die Gelübde, the vow or solemn promise priest aspirants have to make when they officially get appointed as priests. By reaching the chorus, we finally find out what or whom the aforementioned Aufforderung "Zeig dich" actually refers to. In contrast to the verses, the chorus features less lines, yet sounds heavier and more pushing, more dringlich, urgent. It basically underlines both the wish and the urgency behind this demand. Show yourself, zeig dich, which is especially brought forward in the first line. Zeig dich, versteck dich nicht. Zeig dich, wir verlieren das Licht. Zeig dich, kein Engel in der Not. Kein Gott zeigt sich, der Himmel färbt sich rot. Show yourself, don't you hide. Show yourself, we are losing the light. Show yourself, no angel in time of need. No God shows, the sky turns red. So the chorus sort of contains both elements of the lyrical eye's wishful thinking at first and hope pretty much, and then realizing the reality later on. So both the song's title and this first line refers to the Christian God who is supposed to show themselves instead of hiding, to do something against the aforementioned terrible things which even have happened in the realms of the church. In addition, all this refers to various common attributes and associations related to the Christian God. In religious texts and verses, they are said to be gütig, gracious or affectionate, allmächtig, almighty, and allwissend, omniscient. And basically primarily a good God who has an interest in preventing harm and evil things from happening. However, since bad things keep happening, once again also in religious institutions, I think the lyrical eye feels a mixture of die Wut, anger, das Unverständnis, the lack of understanding, die Enttäuschung, the disappointment, die Hilflosigkeit, the helplessness, der Zweifel, the doubt, and die Verlogenheit, the dishonesty or mendacity on the church's side of things. Especially the second line, wir verlieren das Licht, we are losing the light, seems like an obvious statement relating to these feelings. But what could das Licht, the light, actually refer to? What could it mean in the context of the song? Either way, I think it's a pretty extensive metaphor, and I'm gonna tell you why. The light, which, when you think about it, basically is a bright element, a bright source of something surrounded by darkness. So, for instance, it could stand for all the morally good and normal social norms and rules we have as human beings, being good to each other, helping other people, etc. In short, doing good things and preventing bad things from happening. In general, the light might also stand for hope or a neutral belief in positive outcomes. In a specifically Christian religious context, it could as well refer to der Stern von Bethlehem, the Star of Bethlehem. The guiding light, which in Christian mythology led die Heiligen Drei Könige, the three Magi, literally the three holy kings, to Maria and Joseph, respectively to baby Jesus. From a more general point of view, by hearing and reading more and more often about these aforementioned atrocities, we as people grow more and more angry and helpless, and we question the moral compass of certain religious men. The personal pronoun wir means we, so the lyrical I is both talking about a larger group of Gläubige, der plural die Gläubige, the believer, and also about themselves actually wanting to believe and being a believer, yet they can't help but struggle with following the religiously preached moral system more and more because of these cruel cases. The line kein Engel in der Not refers to the absence of what we Germans call der plural die Schutzengel, the guardian angel, in those and other bad situations. By reaching the final line, the lyrical I basically resignates and acknowledges its own helplessness and the lack of a helping God who would do anything in order to prevent child abuse and other bad things from happening. The sky turns red, which could be interpreted in many ways too. For instance, the sky usually turns red during dusk or sunset, which introduces the end of the day. Drawing an analogy to this situation, criminal acts like these could increasingly lead to the end of the once pretty influential and dominant role of the church and/or religion in a society, by giving a moral compass and rules to follow or to believe in. Red itself is a very figurative and expressive complex color. It stands for romances and love, which of course would be a cynical twist in the basic situation we're faced with in this song. It also stands for a warning, a color of prohibition and lines which should definitely not be crossed. And since it's der Himmel, the sky in a religious context here, which turns red, it could mean the supposedly good and positive moral ethics given to believers by God turn out to be not so good and positive after all. Or, which would be sort of the ultimate form of helplessness, it could mean that even God and the angels, even though they might have good intentions, can't prevent these things from happening, which in turn would again question the usual religious principles of an almighty and powerful God, who is said to be and able to handle all and everything. So last but not least, let's take a closer look at the third verse. Verfehlung, verfolgen, Verführung, vergelten, Vergnügen, verpönt, verlogen und verwöhnt, aus Versehen sich an Kindern vergehen, verbreiten und vermehren im Namen des Herrn. Looking into or pursuing misconduct or breach of regulations. For verfolgen, to follow or to chase, in the sense of etwas nachgehen, to look into things, for instance evidences in a criminal investigation. And it's die Verfehlung, singular, die Verfehlungen, plural. Repaying or requiting temptation, die Verführung, singular, die Verführungen, plural. Pleasure or amusement frowned upon, das plural, die Vergnügen. Dishonest and petted or spoiled. Sexually abusing children by accident. For aus Versehen meaning by accident, so both lines are directly connected. Spreading and procreating in the name of the Lord. Aside from my appreciation for the band tackling this topic in the first place, I really enjoy the arrangement of this song. I love the fact that they didn't introduce the chorus right after the first verse, yet they teased it by playing the pre-chorus with Zeig dich. Because this way they not only raise questions and make you think who is supposed to show or reveal themselves, well, if you understand German I guess, no, they also create a pretty cool atmosphere which gives you time to think about this and to reflect on things, and it also builds up anticipation for a powerful chorus. So of course I'd like to know a couple of things. What is your opinion on the song? Did you like it at first, and what was your initial impression like? What do you think about the lyrics and about the band tackling this very delicate topic? After having listened to the album multiple times by now, I can truly say that this one is one of my favorite tracks on the album as a whole. Of course, you're also invited to watch my other videos about the German language and culture and Rammstein related videos, including, well, language-related things, explanations of certain metaphors in the song, of certain words that Till Lindemann likes to use, and the lyrics in general, translations, interpretations, and whatnot from a native German's perspective. Feel free to do that. You can find a clickable playlist with all my Rammstein-related videos right here, and thanks for doing that in advance, I guess. Thanks for watching anyway. And what is there left for me to say? Well, I'm your Vlog Dave. Tschüss und bis zum nächsten Mal.